As Omaha resident Brian Windhorst would say, what it do, baby? If you understand that reference, you are in the correct place. This is the Half Court Press, episode, probably many, but for us, episode 1. I'm Jimmy Watkins. I am, for the all intents and purposes of this podcast, the Nebraska basketball writer. Yes, we do a little football over here too, but not today. He is Joel Lorenzi. He's got a snazzy corduroy jacket on here today. He is the Creighton basketball beat writer.
Yes, sir.
He is brand new still. I don't know, how long did you get to be brand new? A month? 2 months?
Until the people
start
okay. doing all that.
Joel, how is it going?
I'm chilling, man. I'm glad to be here. I know this podcast hasn't been a thing for a while, but I feel like this is a good time to bring it back. I think we got some
it's exciting. We got good chemistry.
Yeah.
It didn't show while we were trying to build furniture at Joel's house a couple weeks ago.
I was building furniture.
Joel was I was hammering. I was hammering, right? Come on, give me my hammer.
Well, I don't know what those nails look like now, but I did most of the work.
If they're still in there, we consider it a success. I also did strip a screw while we were building furniture.
Yeah.
I that pretty much halted the proceedings for the evening. That's pretty tough on my part. We're back. We're going to talk about basketball much better than we build furniture. And today is just going to be what I call a basketball icebreaker.
Let's do it.
I feel like if you're listening to this podcast, you kind of know who I am, right? Like, I've been here for about a year now, covered an entire basketball season, covered a Creighton tournament run.
Yeah.
This is a very niche audience for a podcast. I think you guys kind of understand what I'm about to some degree. Joel's still new, so we're going to gear this thing towards Joel. I'm going to ask Joel some basketball questions that will kind of help introduce you guys to how he thinks about basketball, how he thinks in general, what kind of dude he is, what kind of dude you're going to be reading and dealing with here on a regular basis. First things first.
Oh, geez.
This is big picture. It's pretty simple.
All right.
Basketball coaches love saying that so-and-so, usually a seventh man white dude off the bench, plays basketball the right way.
The right way, yeah.
Joel, what is the right way to play basketball? What is the ideal way to play basketball?
Man, I don't think there is a right way to play basketball. You know, I think this debate came up a lot through Giannis's progression, I think, and before he really reached, not peak stardom, because I think he could still get better, but, you know, when he won that ring, people were like, okay, like the discussion on whether he was a fully fledged superstar was like out the window. Like, it was like, okay, this guy's up there. But before that, it was like, oh, how can you be the best player on a championship team when you play like him? You can't shoot, whatever.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, we are in this era where it's skill based, but there's no right way to play, dude. Like, you could be a guy who sets 1 million screens in a game and still be a superstar. You could, you could have these different skill sets and still be really good. So, like, personally, I like a brand of basketball that's like a lot of good-looking, clean sets. I don't like stagnant stuff. This is why I'm an NBA guy. But, like, even in the NBA, you'll see some bad offenses for sure. But I think, a lot of screens, a lot of good actions. That's the type of basketball I like, but there's no wrong way to play the game, I think. Well, I should say there's no politically correct way. There's no correct way to play the game, but there's definitely some wrong ways, I think. But
I agree with you, and I think that's the beauty. That's why I love basketball. There's so many different ways to do it. There's that's one thing I think that college basketball has over the NBA is stylistic diversity. I think the NBA is kind of heading towards a space where a lot of guys, 15, 20 teams have a guy that they just give the ball to and say, here, run 30 pick and rolls a game. And that's like, okay, it's fun to watch Luka Doncic run 30 pick and rolls a game, but it's, it's also fun to dive into, in college basketball, guys just trying junky stuff sometimes, and it takes your eyes a minute to adjust sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and even then, I think, like, when I was covering Mizzou, like, I would have dived to see a guy that was good enough to just run pick and roll all game. Like, like, there's still levels to this, I think. So.
Absolutely. Me personally, I like watching. I just love. I mean, this is almost not fair because I'm going to say I like watching the Warriors, and a lot of what they do is, and why it works is because Steph and Clay command so much attention off the ball. But I do like watching guys constantly moving off the ball, and one action flows into the next, and guys knowing where each other are at all time, like guys who have that mind meld, like watching Steph and Draymond. I think that's really cool. My follow-up advice. So you say you like running actions, you like crisp, clean movement in the half court. Do you follow your own advice? We were playing pickup. Do you play that way?
No, I don't think anybody. I don't think anybody.
What's your pickup game?
Spot up. I'm allowed to spot up. You feel me? Attack, closeouts. I'm a roll guy. Like, I'm not on the ball a ton. Well, it depends on the competition, but I'm not on the ball a ton. If I'm playing on my guys back home, I'm real spot up, attack, closeouts, make the right pass, the next pass, stuff like that.
I'm with you. If I'm running point, our team is probably in some trouble. Not that I can't dribble, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's my strength. I'm better off just. And if I'm bringing the ball up, I'm gonna shoot more. So people are either gonna get upset or look at me crazy because sometimes the deep ones go in. You know what I mean? College or pro basketball? What is your preference and why?
I hope the listeners don't hate me for this. It's the NBA. There's no better league in the world than the NBA, and I even have fun these days. Catching highlights of games overseas. Now, granted, I'm not gonna say overseas basketball is better to watch than college basketball. I don't think that's true, but it's just something different about the guys who do this for a living, like for money, the big money. I mean, granted, college players do this for money now too, but the pros it's the best level of basketball you can get. And I think you see that, like, I really enjoyed these past playoffs. Like, say what you want. I know people are either hated it or loved it, but I really enjoyed these past playoffs, especially that series with the Bucks and the Celtics. I think that was probably the best series in the whole playoffs. Like, stuff like that. Like, there's no better basketball than that to me.
The ceiling on the NBA is much, much higher when you get the best players in the world playing at their peak. I will say for college basketball, though, I mentioned earlier, there's stylistic diversity. There's more of that. Yeah. The potential for upsets, like there's really no version of St. Peter's in the NBA. Like you have one-offs like the We Believe Warriors, which is super cool when it happens, but for the most part, 7-game series, you're going to get the better team winning. And I'll say something that it's kind of something I like and don't like about college basketball is that the shot making is just worse.
No doubt.
In the NBA, if Kevin Durant takes pull-up 18-footers, much better chances going in than, say, just name any college basketball player Caleb Love has of making that same shot, even when he's operating on a different level like he was during the tournament. However, there's something to that scarcity. Like if a game's winding down and guys are clanking jumpers, it gives possessions late in games, I feel like, more of an enhanced urgency, importance to them, because it just feels so much harder to score. And as a viewer, in high leverage situations, I'll qualify it by saying that because, regular season game 15 college basketball, no one's making anything. It's 59-57. I'm out. But in the tournament, when there's that scarcity, when it feels like you can see they're struggling to score, it makes it more exciting when they do. For me. So I'll give college basketball that, and the tournament is just, I don't know, it's so fun. I think the NBA playoffs are aesthetically more pleasing to watch, but the tournament is so much more exciting, man.
Yeah. And I agree with you on a lot of those fronts. I think, when I was in Indy, I covered the first 2 St. Peter's games. So I saw that live up close. And by the way, St. Peter's was running good actions and good sets, which helped them a lot. But
also run a little matchup zone sometimes, that's what I'm talking about, the junky stuff.
And it's like with college, it's like good teams, because you can see good teams. Well, I guess good teams falter at both levels, but, like, I don't know. It's like the window for each game. Like, in the NBA, you got playoff series. With these, it's like one game and you're done. So in college, it's more exciting on that front. And I think, I don't know, like you mentioned with KD and the shot making, like the thing with college, I think that the playing field is obviously more level because you could have the best guy in college. I mean, you could go 5 or 10 seasons in college basketball without having a prospect like KD. Like, so it's always the playing field is going to be relatively level. And, like, I don't know, like, the best player in college could be, an average NBA player. So you're never going to have this super craziest talent all the time in college basketball. But, like, I think that makes it better having the obviously dumbed down talent, I guess, if that's even okay to say. Like, the playing field being more level makes it fun, I guess.
And what it also does is it encourages teams to run the kind of offenses that are a little bit more fun to watch, right? Like you got guys who, if you don't have a guy, I've been saying this about Nebraska basketball this offseason, I don't think they're going to have a guy that they can just stick the ball in their hand and say, do stuff. I don't think they're going to have that guy, which is obviously can be an issue late in the game when defenses are most locked in and they have seen most of your stuff, and you need someone to just create an advantage. That can be a disadvantage. It also can be an advantage because if nobody can do that, then they kind of have to play within the realms of a system. And when systems are run correctly, when the plays are executed, it can be pretty. Like if the ball, you get a penetrate, swing, like that's aesthetically pleasing basketball. You get guys attacking closeouts and then shooting a skip pass across the court. Like that stuff to me, and I think for most people who really pay attention and have played basketball or have a good idea of what they're seeing, that's what they want to see. Okay. So I think that there's an element of that to the college game, and also I just can't get over the tournament. I've struggled with this sometimes because I am a big NBA guy, and every year when the tournament comes around, the college basketball heads are puffing their chests out, right? Like this is the best postseason in the world. Like it's so captivating. Like you can't miss a game. You can't miss a second of the action. I don't have a retort. That stuff is just cool, man. When March Madness games come down to the last 2 minutes, there just aren't, like, it's a game 7 every night. That's the best way to put it, and that part is really fun.
Yeah.
The next question I have for you, Joel. This is prudent to, I think, more prudent to what I cover because Sam McEwen, our boss, has this theory that last year, part of the reason Nebraska basketball's offense was so stagnant was that these dudes were they heard Fred's voice in their head every time they thought about taking a shot from 16 feet. Because, where basketball has landed is that we understand that layups, three-pointers, and free throws are what we're gunning for here. The best place to get those things is at the rim or from behind the three-point line.
Yeah, I think I know where this is going.
The worst place to get those things is from 16 feet out.
Sure.
What is the value of the mid-range jumper in 2022? Does it have value?
The value is probably as high as it's ever been, I think.
Ooh,
I think if you've seen,
I like this.
I think if you've seen at least counting the NBA, grouping the NBA into this discussion, you've seen in the past couple, maybe even 3 or so postseasons that the mid-range is like actually how guys, I mean, some offenses even rely on it. I mean, it's that change of pace, that change of shot making that allows you to keep a defense guessing. And for some guys, it's their go-to shot. Like you've seen Chris Paul, Chris Middleton, Kevin Durant, guys like that are getting to that elbow, getting to that shot that they know they like. And sometimes it's crazy because some defenses want to force you into those spots, but like these are those guys' bread and butter. And it makes for good basketball. And obviously when you got the best shot makers in the world, it puts a lot of value in those shots. I mean, when you got a guy on ball like that who's a super big usage creator, I mean, you need shots like that. So I think it's as high as it's ever been. Obviously, it's easy to say, back in the day, Mike and Kobe and those guys, 90s, whatever, they were the ones who were really putting all the effort into that because the three-point line wasn't as exaggerated. But frankly, they were scoring less back then and whatnot, and the pace was slower and all that good jazz. So I think right now you're seeing it at its peak, maybe not as spread out across the league, but among the people who do use it, it's almost never been as highly valued.
I think its value is disproportionately high at the end of games, end of shot clocks, that sort of when you absolutely need someone to just create something. Because a lot of times that's guys' comfort spots. You can do a couple crossovers, go between the legs a couple times, you pull up from 17 feet. Particularly if you have one of those, like I have a big wing creator, like let's say an Arthur Kaluma. Yeah. Give Arthur Kaluma the ball left wing. You got 5 seconds on the shot clock. He's gonna take a few dribbles in, maybe snatch it back, create some space. That's the best shot you can get in those situations. When the thing is, that's kind of my favorite part about where basketball is today is that, to some degree, there's a baseball element of it where we have sort of mathematically figured the game out, right? Like we understand that if you shoot more threes, it's probably better for your offense as long as you have decent shooters.
Yeah.
We understand that getting to the rim is extremely valuable. We understand that free throw attempts are extremely valuable. We understand where the game is weighted. And yet, when there's 2 minutes left to go, the best offense is any clean look. Any clean look you can get. And a lot of times the easiest clean look to get is go halfway toward the rim, stop and pop, right?
Yeah.
So that, to me, it's in the highest leverage moments, which is why I think the people who, let's say, aren't pleased with the where basketball has ended up, too many threes, old school kind of mentality with it. They get to every playoffs or every NCAA tournament that you can hear them being loud, because that's when you see high leverage shots, big shots, game winning shots of that variety. And that's just because that's when you, at the end of the game, it's so organized, it's so understood, and yet at the end everything just falls apart. Sure. That's the fun part to me. You get, guys who are shooting 85% free throws for the year, they miss 2 at the end. It's just so pressure ridden, and everything that you know about the game kind of falls apart at the end. I think that's what makes basketball so fun, close basketball games so fun. Yeah. All right, we'll talk a little college hoops now. We'll go. I have Creighton is by far the most popular pick in the Big East right now. There's no media polls out right now. I can almost guarantee you Creighton is going to be at the top of the media polls. They were near the top of all the way too early top 25 polls, and I did a quick study on that during the offseason, like how accurate are those polls. I don't remember the exact number. They're more predictive than you think. Like the teams that end up at the top of those polls have a decent chance of ending up in the tournament, making a decent tournament run, and so forth.
Sure.
I'll propose to you, Joel, and this is basically just your opportunity to riff on Creighton. You don't even have to actually answer this question. Okay. I'm giving away the game by saying that, but Creighton or the field in the Big East? What do you got?
Creighton, I think.
Why?
Man, if you look at I was particularly watching as a bystander back then. I mean, I didn't realize I'd be covering the team back when I was in Indy covering the tournament. And they had a TV everywhere with every game possible going on. And I think I was on deadline while Creighton was playing Kansas in that second round game. And so I was like kind of glanced over, but I'm like, damn, I got to see this. And I was really excited about how far they took it, especially with, 2 key guys hurt. So, I liked Creighton then. And then you add Baylor Shireman. Obviously, I think Kaluma is set for a leap. You get back Nemhard. Still got the Defensive Player of the Year in the league. And so I think there's a lot to be excited about with this team. And I don't think it's one of those things where you could argue like, oh, there's so many stars on this team that's like, oh, they won't work well together or whatever. Because, I mean, it feels almost based on this team's, the program's history, like the guys they have together, they just feel like such a good nucleus. Like Kalkbrenner isn't going to affect anything. I mean,
he's a rim runner. He's dependent on what the guards give him, right?
Right. And it's like the defensive anchor, you need that, right? And I mean, if he starts shooting threes during the season, then sure, I guess. But like they don't even need.
This sounds like someone who has been told that Ryan Kalkbrenner has been working on the 3-point stroke. Everyone's working on their 3-point stroke right now. I'll believe it when I see it. Derek Walker.
I'm not saying he'll be
attempted like 2 3-pointers last year. They're telling he's looking comfortable shooting 3-pointers now. Okay, we'll see.
Look, all I've seen is that he's attempting them in practice, but I don't know if he'll be an effective shooter in the season, but just
that feels like a long-term project.
Just throwing it out there, but they don't need him to be anyway.
Right.
You got your 3 guards. Getting back to your 3-guard lineup that they like so much, and Nemhard, Trey Alexander, and Baylor Shireman. And I think Baylor Shireman, as for those who maybe aren't familiar with him or are maybe underrating their acquisition, I think what he adds is, and this is crucial on any team, a third ball handler for this team. I mean, you already got 2 good ones in Nemhard and Trey Alexander, who I know a lot of people like, including you, to carry that backcourt and be good decision makers. But Baylor Shireman was the decision maker on his team, and he's bigger. He's 6'6". Obviously, the weight class doesn't match up, but he's a bigger creator, and it gives you another guy when the possessions break down. That's a third guy. Not if like a second side action breaks down. This is a third guy we're talking about that he's fully capable of making a play, not just for himself but for others, like at a high rate, and he'll spot up. He'll do everything. I mean, he just seamlessly plugs in. Like, I know people like Alex O'Connell, but like this dude's in terms of offense, like plugs in.
Oh, he just does so much more.
Yeah.
O'Connell was a spot up shooter who was a great cutter and had a little more bounce to him than I think most people would think. But Baylor Shireman can just do things on the ball that guy couldn't do. To your point about his size, I've made this point about Sam Griesel before on the Pick Six podcast. There are passing angles that you can see by virtue of being 6'5", 6'6", that smaller dude just can't see. Over the top cut, hitting a guy over the top with the defender's back turned to you. You can see that. Some guys can't. There are smaller guards who, if you're being defended by someone who's super long, you miss guys cutting because you just can't see them, right? Taller guys don't have that issue because they can go over the top more often. And to further your point, you made a good point there about the second side action. If it breaks down, they can just be shifting the defense at all times and have a great chance to beat it because they have shooters that you have to close out on, and those dudes can attack a closeout, and it's just going to be a nightmare to defend them. We've praised them a lot right now. I want to throw a little devil's advocate at you because there's a lot of Creighton love happening in general in the universe. Yeah. A lot of Creighton love happening in this room right now. Here's the flip side of this argument. They were a bubble team that, granted, partially it was partially because they were low on depth, but they played way slower than they usually did last year, in part because the offense wasn't working at its usual clip. They couldn't shoot like they were used to being able to shoot. Yeah. And most of the major players involved are still there. In fact, you could argue that the two best shooters are the ones that left. They brought in Farabello, who can shoot it to help supplement that. But why are we talking about this team as a top 10, top 5 team and not a top 25 team, which is where I think if you freeze frame where they were right when Ryan Nembhard got hurt last year and add Baylor Shireman to that, I think that's what the conversation is. But now it's a little bit distorted because they made a super cool tournament run under super adverse circumstances and ended up playing the team who won the national championship really close in the second round. Why is that a closer version to what they are than what they were in December, January last year?
Sure, yeah. And I know people are on the fence about Nembhard's integration with this team because, some people say, hey, this team peaked when he got hurt or whatever.
Right, and it can be tricky. I mean, Trey Alexander had better assist turnover numbers than he did. A short sample size. I'm just saying, these points can be made.
I hear you. And I just think it feels like there's too many, oftentimes we look at a team and we'll see them fall to late game because they run out of options. And, what they've stuck to won't work anymore. And there's a difference between, your game plan and your offense faltering and then, your options in terms of players faltering. And I think you go down the line and you just got so many options. Looking at teams who can create and not create. We've seen teams, in college, a lot of teams struggle on the ball. Unless you're running good sets or whatever to get these guys looks, you'll struggle on the ball with every other team, maybe one in every 3 teams. And so I think with this team, you add Shireman, which is a bigger part than I think some people that. I think probably before they added him, they probably were in the 15 to 20 range. But when you add him, it's just too many guys on ball that could really change a game. And even Kaluma, if they'll play him at the 4, he can put the ball on the floor and he's gonna get to a bucket. So I think it's just you add a year of growth to these guys. Maybe they have a good summer, a good off season, and they come to the season better than they were a year ago, which I think means everything because I think that team I think it was coincidental that Nembhard was out when they peaked, but like it took them all year to peak, which is probably I don't think that would happen this year, but you never know. But I think Shireman is as big a piece as a lot of these programs picked up for this team specifically to carry their offense and keep them from being a 20-ish team to being like hovering around top 10.
You made a good point. Every coach says it. It's proven true over the last couple of years. The biggest leap that college players tend to make is between their freshman and sophomore years. Jaden Ivey did it last year at Purdue. Keegan Murray did it last year at Iowa. Johnny Davis did it last year at Wisconsin. Ryan Nembhard, Trey Alexander, Arthur Kaluma are all in that spot this year. So a lot can happen in a summer. You make a good point there.
Yeah, and I'm no draft guy, but
right.
Everybody's saying Kaluma's going to make that jump.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't heard or seen enough to tell for myself, but I think just going off history and that freshman to sophomore jump, I think.
And just you can just look at him and be like, it's probably an NBA guy.
Like, he could be a good NBA player. And I think if you go based on what he did overseas a few weeks ago, like, he was killing out there. Like, he looked really damn good out there. So I think if you go based on that and try to map out his trajectory, I mean, he could be this team's best player. He should be this team's best player this upcoming year.
On the flip side of that, we have Nebraska, which has finished 14th, 14th, and 13th in the Big Ten.
Okay.
Under Fred Hoiberg. There are only 14 teams in the Big Ten. We had Creighton or the Field in the Big East to win it. This one is more a question for you or for me than for you. You say whatever you want. Nebraska or the Field for 14th in the Big Ten.
Wait. So who else is at the bottom?
We got Minnesota. So that's a good way to frame this. We're looking at Northwestern has been at the bottom the last 3 years, and they just lost Pete Nance, who was by a significant margin their best player.
Yeah.
Minnesota, the second-year coach Ben Johnson, actually started really well last year, like 10-1 against a cupcake soft schedule, but did a couple of things throughout the year, like had a low turnover rate the entire year.
Sure.
Had a pretty decent defense. I haven't looked at these numbers in a while. For a large chunk of the year, like they were building an identity. You could see they're going somewhere. They have a top 30 recruiting class, I believe. Penn State's in a similar situation. Micah Shrewsbury, first-year coach last year. This year they got a 4-star kid. They got top 20. These recruiting rankings change all the time, but at what point it was a top 25 recruiting class. Sure. Both of these programs did have better recruiting classes than Nebraska. Nebraska was right there as well in the top 30, but that's who we're talking about here. We're talking about Penn State. We're talking about Minnesota. We're talking about Northwestern. Last year we were talking about Maryland. I just think the talent base for that program is a little bit too big to stick them in this conversation.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I think if we're looking at Northwestern versus Nebraska, I mean, I might have to say the Field for 14th because, I mean, granted, I don't think I've watched enough Nebraska to really be as hard on them.
That's the thing, though. You can look like if you watch last year, last year's team isn't going to look anything like this year's team.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much you could necessarily learn. You're like, C.J. Wilcher can shoot the ball. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Derek Walker moves guys. Okay.
So, yeah, I think there's a slim margin to where I'm picking the Field, but definitely, not definitely. I think I'd say the Field in this case.
Northwestern's going to be pretty bad.
Yeah.
Pretty bad. At 2 sports this year, tough break for that school. They got a great journalism school. Not feeling too bad about it. Yeah. Not feeling too bad for them. They got a good setup over there. Their school is like in the heart. Not in the heart, but like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes outside of Chicago.
Yeah, shout out Evanston.
Pretty good stuff. Joel's from Chicago, for those who don't know. I'm also going to take the Field. I'll take it from the Nebraska perspective. I just think there is a smaller percentage chance that we're going to see the kind of depressing offense that we saw last year, the kind of offense that bleeds over into other areas of the game. There were many times at post-game press conferences last year where Fred Hoiberg would go up there and just say, I think we missed some shots, and it bled into the other end of the floor. People stopped running back on defense, that sort of stuff. Yeah. And we just gotta make shots. And that is so tired. It's such a overly simple explanation. It is tired. You get tired of hearing it. It's like, okay, well, if it's a want to thing, can you can you kick somebody in the ass, right? Like, but it's kind of true. Like, especially, and I kept saying this last year, they had so many players. Like Alonzo Verge, what does he do? Get buckets. Bryce McGowan, what does he do? Get buckets. Keisei Tominaga, what does he do? In theory, he does it for the Japanese national team. He had like 34 last week. He gets buckets. He shoots. He bombs threes. What does Keon Edwards, again, in theory, do? Score. Finish cool dunks, make threes. CJ Wilshire, what does he do? Make threes. You have a lot of dudes who their identities as basketball players are rooted in scoring, shooting, whatever. And if that's not working, then it's going to get in your head a little bit. The analogy I use this with Sam. It's like, Sam, you think of yourself as a good father, right? Okay. Say Sam, I think, has 2 kids, a son and a daughter. Say you got into it with your daughter before you came into the office today. And before you left the house, she said, I hate you. Which daughters say, they don't mean it. But I don't have any kids. But what I'm told is it hurts. It hurts to hear that. Yeah. It might make Sam think, am I really a good dad? And while Sam's thinking that, he might put his recorder down and not think about it and then lose the recorder. Right? So it could bleed over into your job. If you feel like you're doing something wrong as a dad, it can bleed over into your job. If you're shooting, which Nebraska was at one point last year, shooting like 25% from 3 as a team, like 10 games into the season, this is supposed to be the 3-point shooting team. I mean, like, you should have seen, Joel, the kind of tweets that were coming out of Nebraska basketball practices last summer. Amen. John Rothstein is going to these practices and saying, I don't know how anyone's going to guard this team. That was happening. That was a real thing that happened. I don't know how anyone's going to stop this offense. Well, they stopped themselves. Yeah. They just were bricking a bunch of decent-looking threes. And part of the reason they were doing that is because Alonzo Verge would just hijack a possession, or Bryce would hijack a possession, or Kobe Webster would hijack a possession. They would take these depressing, ugly shots that missed ugly. Like Bryce has a switch on a big man. It's okay, this is where we want to be. He shoots step back from 30 feet. It doesn't hit anything. Mm-hmm. Alonzo Verge loved this, and I kind of like this shot too. This 1 foot is it's the Luka, the 1 foot fadeaway, Luka, Dirk, whatever. Mm-hmm. And he'd brick it, and Fred would yank him immediately. Kobe this was kind of his role, so it was kind of hard to fault him for it. He was this bench jitterbug guard. And he would take, he'd be sizing a guy up with his dribble. He'd shoot step back. Clank, like ugly clank, and the other guys standing around there think they're open, and it just seeps into you. It just bleeds into the rest of the team, right? This year, I don't think there's a ton of that. I think these are guys who are going to run what they're told to run and make the simple. They're gonna make the simple stuff happen. Make one extra pass, good to great, that sort of stuff. And I don't think that they're super talented. I think last year's team is comfortably more talented than this year's team. Sure. But because this team doesn't have so many of those stagnant, let's say, tendencies, I'm being nice by saying that, I just think that there's just going to be a better feeling around the team, and dudes are going to be happier with their role, and they're going to be more likely to put in the extra effort, even if the shots aren't going, even if offensive possessions are going south. Yeah. So for that reason, I just think the floor is higher. I think the ceiling's shorter too, for what that's worth.
And to your point, good systems win games more.
Absolutely,
than talent.
Fred is one of the best. Yeah. Still, coaches come in and say it after. This is what would happen last year. Nebraska loses a game by, I don't know, something between 5 and 20 points. The coach comes in there and says Fred's one of the best offensive coaches in basketball. Takes their 20-point win and walks out. It is true. Fred is a really good offensive basketball coach. I just don't think he's had the right pieces. I'm not sure that he still does this year. He has better fitting pieces though, and he has pieces that are prepared for the Big Ten's physicality, and I think that's worth more than the 10 wins that they got last year, which is the benchmark. It's their highest win total of his era. Yeah. So I'll take the field as well. Best player in college hoops this year. Who's it going to be?
Oh, jeez.
Probably it's usually an old guy, right? Like, we're talking Drew Timme.
Don't.
Oscar Tshiebwe.
This is what I don't like about college basketball. We get to naming all these nasty inside big.
Future
Well, they're not
second,
nasty in college, but,
future second round picks
like
that are dominating the sport. It is a disconnect.
yeah. I think if we're looking at all the bigs, probably like you're looking at what Sheboy, Baycott, Timmy. I would be
Hunter
hard.
Dickinson.
Hunter Dickinson, yeah. I think
He
Hunter
was shooting
Dickinson's
threes
probably
last year.
Hunter Dickinson's really good. I think he's probably third in that bunch though. I'd say either Timmy or Sheboy. To be honest, I can't think of any wings or guards right now.
Right.
But I think Timmy or Sheboy for sure. It's hard to not put my money on Timmy with how he's.
There's a 1990s aspect of college basketball. Big dudes kind of rule the world, right?
Yeah.
Part of that's because the guards aren't ready yet. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna go off the board. This is not the best player in college basketball, but I could see this person being considered the best player in college basketball by the end of the year. That's Caleb Love from North Carolina because
that was in the back of my mind.
Here's the thing: you have Caleb Love. I was looking up his numbers last night. Not good.
Yeah.
Guy shot 37% last year from the field. That's bad. But he just went crazy in the tournament, and you saw the capability. Like, it's in there for that guy to be a big-time shot maker. And I think that basketball is so confidence-driven, and it cannot be overstated the kind of confidence, the level of confidence that can be gained from performing like that on that stage. And you can really carry that over into the summer, and the team's going to be really good. That's the crucial point of this. To be considered the best player in college basketball, you have to be on one of the best teams.
Yeah.
North Carolina's going to be right near the top where they should be, and I think he is the guy that stands out the most on that team because he has the ball in his hands. He makes crazy shots. So that's my off-the-board answer. That's not going to be the answer. He's not the best player in college basketball, but I think it's a fun
for what it's
thought
worth,
exercise.
He was supposed to be up there in these discussions a while ago. I mean, when he was a freshman, before his freshman season, he was top 10 in people's mock drafts. Like this was
he shot 31% that year.
Like this was the type of player we were looking at when he was coming out of CBC in St. Louis. Like he was that guy. Like he was supposed to be one of the better guards in his draft class, and it just had to pan out that way. And granted, you said confidence is a big deal. I think that's something that's affected him a lot. Obviously, shot making too. But I'll play devil's advocate's here point about being on one of the better teams because I'd say they're the best team in college basketball.
For sure. They have our guy Pete Nance, who we mentioned earlier.
Exactly. So, like, my thing is, like, do you have so many pieces that you can't even see the full potential of Caleb Love? You know what I mean? Like, you got Pete Nance, you got Baycott, who are all going to score. Right. You got R.J. Davis still. You got wings on that team. Like,
smart. You say the same thing about Creighton. Not even in a negative way. You're just not going to, like, maybe like Arthur Kaluma on, I don't freaking know, DePaul is getting 25-30 a game.
No, that's a fact. And I think still, okay, to that point, I think Kaluma will be drafted first round at best off the potential.
Right.
Like
flashes. You'll see flashes, yeah. Like the Kansas game.
Yeah, but it
that'll
won't be
part of
because
the
he's
tape.
the best player on Creighton, I don't think.
Sure. All right, quick, rapid fire. Jordan or LeBron?
Brian.
Why?
Man, dude. NBA Twitter has made me almost dislike Michael Jordan, and I'm from Chicago. Like, some people are just so hell-bent on this dude being the greatest player of all time. And I think there are certain factors that go into this GOAT discussion because the term GOAT carries, like, a legacy aspect to it. I think when you talk about legacy, like, few legacies match up with Michael Jordan's, right? But in terms of greatest player of all time, like best player to lace up the shoes, I don't think there's a more talented player ever than LeBron James. In terms of just what he's capable of on the basketball court, just at 6'8", 6'9", 250, that alone is something to be reckoned with. But then he's handling the average and having seasons where he's averaging 10 assists a game. He's granted they had a horrible season last year, but he averaged 30 points. Like, this is a dude that's among the best scorers of all time, among the best passers of all time. One of the better rebounders for a guy of his profile, and in his best days, one of the better defenders in the league. Like, he just has done it all for so long, and he's carried teams differently. I mean, granted, not as well as Michael Jordan, I don't think, but in terms of just pure capability, I think it's hard to see anybody other than LeBron and say they're better than him. To
go back to what the point of this episode is, these are very intentional, these last few, because This, I think, gets really into that. How do you look at basketball? Like, if you're a LeBron over Jordan guy, that tells me that you put less stock into the force of will, Mamba mentality,
Like, dude,
that sort of like the. I told you, like you said, I made up a slight from this is something that Jordan. There's 1,000 stories about Michael Jordan. Someone said Michael Jordan can't do this. Michael Jordan said, "Oh yeah."
and he took that personally.
The next time he went out and did that at the highest level, anyone like the Portland when he hit a bunch of threes against Portland in the finals with the shrug, right?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. I happen to. This is my thing about LeBron Jordan. I'll make it quick. Has always been if I want to win a Game 7, I'm taking Jordan. If I want to build a franchise for the next 20 years, I'm taking Bron.
Yeah.
Because I do think in those short, high-intensity moments, that force of will stuff matters, man. The
But
guys,
you know what's crazy? People don't give as much credit
they do.
to LeBron.
No, you're right. You're right.
As being
He has
clutch
some of
as
that.
He, is,
he has
bro.
some of that. He has some of that. It's not the same level. It's really not. You just didn't. Michael Jordan didn't lose those games, and he was the favorite in most of the games that he did play of those varieties. He just didn't lose them, and I do think part of it is just because he was insane.
Yeah.
He was insane.
Sure. Yeah.
LeBron is incredibly dedicated. He's super talented. He rises to the occasion. But there's a difference. There's a little bit of we're not going to be writing about if LeBron James is an owner, will he be like Michael Jordan has to leave the box basically every time the Charlotte Hornets play because they suck and he can't handle it.
Jeez.
Will LeBron be that way? I don't know. I don't know.
I think to the point of Mike's teams being favorites in every series, I think that says more. You should give more credit to LeBron in that case. Because, dude, honestly, those series in the back half of the 2010s were
crazy. The Warriors were better than him. Yeah,
I think it was a waste of time as NBA fans because, dude, you knew the Warriors were favored. And honestly, it's just those honestly can't be slights to LeBron. Like, they just can't. You add KD to those teams, and it's insane. Granted, they were some of the greatest series of all time before KD got there, I think. But, dude, I think the only real blemish on LeBron's resume, I mean, maybe you can count this year because he definitely had a hand in assembling that horrible, horrible team they put out there. But the only real blemish postseason-wise in LeBron's career, I think, is the 2011 finals. I mean, granted, you could chalk it up to Dirk being
the
just
Celtics,
a really great player.
The Celtics series when he quit on the Cavs a little bit back in the day.
Man, I know you're not talking about before he had other All-Stars on his team.
I'm just saying. There was a different feeling around that. It's fine. We don't have to spend too much time on it. Kobe or Duncan?
Kobe. That only because I grew up a big Kobe guy and a Lakers guy because of Kobe. I will say I think Tim Duncan is super underrated. Like you could ask casual basketball fans, maybe people who don't watch the sport as often, and they might not even know who Tim Duncan is, right? But they'll know who Kobe is, obviously, because he's become a man of popular culture. He's just so embedded in popular culture and being associated with basketball that Kobe just transcended basketball. But I will say, I'm not mad at people who put Tim Duncan over Kobe. Like, I can see it. I can see the argument. I just think Kobe, man, you want to talk about legacy and greatness. I mean, dude, the slight that people love to put over Kobe besides maybe inefficiency in some seasons or sparingly throughout his whole career.
He played before the efficiency boom, so to speak. So.
Yeah, but I think the main slight is he was robbing to Shaq's Batman or whatever. But dude went and got 2 rings without Shaq, which is more than a lot of players could say. And Tim Duncan, granted, he was the best player on his teams by far. Tim Duncan played within a dynasty. Like, Tim Duncan I don't think Tim Duncan ever played with a bad team.
Here's my argument. I'm going to take Duncan. Did he never play on a bad team because of Tim Duncan, though? Like, Tim Duncan is he's the linking player between all the David Robinson era Spurs and the Tony Parker Ginobili era Spurs. This is a dude who, to me, this is about leadership and that hard to calculate thing about basketball. It's like, how do everyone takes the cue from the best player, right? What does that best player look like, and how does everyone follow suit? People were afraid of Kobe. And, there are dudes who you can't play with Kobe if you can't take a guy who's going to be cussing you out if you made the wrong pass or didn't see him or something like that. Tim Duncan was never going to do that. Pop did it for him, to be frank. Tim Duncan, I compare Steph to Tim Duncan this way. He was just he was always deferential. He went out of his way to make everyone else feel comfortable. And defensively, Kobe was, I think, like a 10-time all defensive team guy. Probably got a few off his reputation, but great defensive player. Big men defensively just have such a bigger impact on the game. Like Tim Duncan by himself could be a good defense. And I think that's a large reason why the Spurs were so consistently good in the regular season. Is if you have a good defense, that's half the battle. And you got a coach like Pop and the rest of the guys they had, that'll take care of the rest. So I just think that part gets underplayed a little bit. Kobe was a bad teammate for big chunks of his career.
Sure.
Big chunks of his career. And he tried to get out of people overlook. He tried to get out of there. He called into a radio show and said, "I'm not playing there again."
Well, sure.
That's a lot.
Now, to your point about Tim Duncan,
20 years of Duncan over 20 years of Kobe for me.
Okay, well, to your point, Tim Duncan, yeah, you can't say it was because he's on those teams that he never played on a bad team, but also he's never had. I mean, Kobe was on teams where Smush Parker and Kwame Brown were like not high usage because Kobe was the usage on those teams, but like they were big parts of those teams. Like I would be doing the same shit Kobe was doing. Like, dude, like I'm.
Well, I think you're a bad teammate then.
Well, I might be, but I don't think it's gonna reflect my time here. Okay. But like Kobe, I would have demanded trade too, especially now. If Kobe played today, oh my gosh.
Right.
He would have demanded trade.
And you could argue, would Tim Duncan have done that? You don't know. The culture around demanding trades has changed dramatically the last 5 to 10 years.
That's cool for Tim Duncan's dignity, but in terms of
I'm saying would he have done the same thing? I'm thinking it's more likely that he would have, just because that's the way now.
I don't think he would. But,
I mean, not if he was on the Spurs and win 50 games every year. But
sure, but either way, I think my argument for Kobe is that you're looking at one of the top 2 or 3 scorers of all time. I don't think that's debatable to me. Mm-hmm. And then you add all the 10-time whatever defense teams that he's been on, and how good he was on both sides of the ball, and just how reliable a first option he was. I think
you could be a jerk and win. He won, so it was good. Yeah. Same with MJ. Yeah. Same deal. All right. Last basketball question. There will be one other question.
Sure.
Best basketball player of the last 5 years. Best basketball player of the next 5 years.
Best basketball player of the last 5 years. I think it's probably been split. I hate to be I know we talk about prisoner of the moment a lot of times, and so I remember the year they were calling Kawhi the best player in the league because he just.
It's basically whoever the best player on the team that wins the championship is.
And I'm a
year.
big Kawhi guy, but I think time has been split between it being Bron, Steph, and KD. I think they each had their time within the last 5 years. Is probably the best player in the league, and I think if you count this past year as within the 5 years, it was Giannis. I think, and I think Giannis is he still has the next 4 or so years, maybe 5. I just don't see a player as good as Giannis right now. I mean, I think there's players certainly close. I think Steph still hovers around that range, especially after the finals he had. KD, he had a tough first round, but I think he's still hovering in that range. Jokic is even in that range. I think a lot of people like to say Jokic is top 2 or 3. Luka is probably going to be up there in the next 5 years. So I'd say, the league is run by these foreign guys. I think it's between Giannis or Luka for the next 5 years.
Best player of the last 5 years is Steph Curry.
Not mad at that.
He won because we're going 22-17, right? So that's the back-to-back and this last year. And even the year that they lost in the play-in, dude was going nuts.
Yeah.
Dude was going nuts. The way that Steph incites fear in defense is second he comes across half court is unparalleled. There are guys who get trapped with the ball at half court. There are not guys who have 5 eyes on them when he doesn't have the ball and crosses half court the way Steph does. Yeah. Everything that team does starts and ends with him. He's the you can say, okay, they won 2 championships in a row against LeBron's Cavs because of Kevin Durant. That's true. Kevin Durant wanted to go there because of Steph. Kevin Durant played the best seasons of his career there because he had the luxury. There's a clip that I'll never forget. It's from the 2017 finals. I think it's game 1. I think it's J.R. Smith trying to stop a fast break. Kevin Durant has the ball. Kevin Durant, who at that point is peak Kevin Durant, There are two Cavs who run away from Kevin Durant, leaving him an empty rim, and he dunks it, and they were running towards Steph. Because he's in the corner for three.
And that's the bus
That's
driver
it right
argument.
there. That's it right there.
Yeah, that's the bus driver argument where people say, oh, well, Steph was still the best player on his team because he demanded that kind of gravity.
Right.
And I'm kind of leaning toward that side, too.
I don't know about the bus driver thing. I think Charles Barkley.
I don't know if I would call it I don't know if I would label
Charles
it bus
Barkley
driver.
is one of my favorite people in the world. I think most of his basketball takes are hot garbage, but that's neither here nor there. He's awesome. I will cry when he dies, but his basketball takes at this point are really, really bad. The next 5 years, Giannis is probably the answer. The counter, I would say Luka, like you said, because Giannis is getting a lot better as a passer. Luka just has all the answers already.
Dude,
there's not a defense for that guy.
Luka's my age, and the way he carried that team through this postseason
it's a bunch
as
of
first
dudes.
option, it felt like LeBron.
It's LeBronish. Yeah, it's LeBronish. Okay. I think that there is it's inseparable, the link between basketball and rap music. All the ballers want to rap, all the rappers want to ball, all that, right?
Sure.
So we'll incorporate that into this podcast at a very surface level, and it'll be at the end every time. So if you don't care about it, that's you. And if you don't care about it at all, we'll stop doing it because we cater to the people. But we'll call it the Music Minute. Joel, what's your favorite rap album of 2022?
Of 2022.
In 60 seconds, I'm timing you.
Jesus, that's a heavy question. I don't know if I can answer that.
Yes, you can because you have 60 seconds.
Okay.
You're looking at the clock now.
Well, look, I'd say there's a rapper not too many people know about, especially outside of New York.
Let's go. He's going backpack.
No, I'm not. I'll say Shawnee Bin Laden is an underground guy. I think a lot of people still haven't heard of. I think XXL or one of those magazines just did a profile on him. I'm not sure he'll make the next Clash or two because he's just not that lane of rapper. But I think he's just so consistently good in his lane of rap it's probably one of the tapes he's made. Any other year, I wish I could have said Kendrick, but his album just didn't stay in my rotation.
Okay,
man.
all right. I'm going Vince Staples.
True.
Ramona Park Broke My Heart. It's an album. It's an album about violence and what it does to you as a child. And the best song on the album is it's a good encapsulation of what's going on here. The song is called When Sparks Fly, and it is a love letter to a gun. And it's about how it basically goes into how Vince Staples used to view violence, and then it tells the story from the perspective. I like when you switch perspectives during a rap song. The first half is Vince Staples talking about this dilemma he has where he's famous now, and should he still be doing this sort of stuff, but it's every time he goes home, this is what his friends are doing, right? And the back half is the gun. The gun talking about, well, why doesn't Vince love me anymore? And I just think that it takes a really tired trope of a love song and just gives it a completely new spin. So I'm going Vince Staples, Ramona Park Broke My Heart. This has been episode 1, for all intents and purposes, of Half Court Press. I'm Jimmy Watkins. He is Joel Lorenzi. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week.